Hello and welcome to this special edition of NJBIZ Conversations. I'm your host, Jeff Kanige. My guests today are Joseph Lebel, he's the President and Chief Operating Officer at OceanFirst Bank, and George Destafney, who is the Chief Community Banking Officer at OceanFirst. Gentlemen, welcome, and George, welcome back.
Jeff, nice to see you.
Good
Same.
to see you too. Thanks for taking the time to do this. Okay, we're talking today about doing business in Monmouth County. So first of all, I think when most people think of Monmouth, they think beaches and Bruce Springsteen. Now, OceanFirst does a lot of work there. You're in the county. You're there on the ground every day. So, as bankers in the region, what comes to mind first when you think of Monmouth County, or what's the dominant sort of impression you have about the region? Joe, I'll start with you, and just tell me a little bit about how you view Monmouth County these days.
Well, it's interesting. It's a lot more industry and commercial business than people give it credit for. But of course,
Uh-huh.
it's very well known for the tourism and a little bit of its affluence, and as you mentioned, celebrities that
Indeed.
have either their primary or secondary houses in the market.
Okay. And George, what about you? What do you think? What when people ask you about Monmouth County, what do you tell them?
In general, overall terms, I think Monmouth County is ideally located. So it's a great reach for people that are commuting into New York City
Right.
and to some extent, a lesser degree into Philadelphia. But it's a very reachable area where you have access to a lot of different things. And of course, the shore areas, Asbury Park, and then the pockets of industry that you see here. Tourism is certainly a big part of the
Sure.
market, but as is healthcare, transportation, logistics. There's a whole lot more that goes into the market. So
Okay.
I think it's the diversity, geography, and the landscape. I think contribute all of it.
I think
Okay. Very good.
I think you hit it on the head, George. That the transit, the access to all the transit hubs, whether it's water or roadways or rail, is a real valuable asset. You can get pretty much anywhere in the tri-state area from Monmouth County.
Right. You have the Garden State Parkway. You have NJ Transit runs all the way through down the shore, all the way into Ocean County, and then the ferries from Atlantic Highlands and Belford go right
That's
to
right.
straight to Wall Street, and it's actually a nice ride. So if anybody's interested in trying that, it's a great way to get to work. So. Okay, let's talk a little bit then about some of the things that are going on there. And I want to start with Fort Monmouth because that may be the most prominent redevelopment effort in the state right now. And so I'm interested from both of you, what does that work mean for the region, especially with a name like Netflix as the headliner? George, what are people around, what would you talk to? What are they saying about it? What do you think the impact is going to be?
I think the impact is going to be significant. And of course, Jeff, everyone's talking about Netflix, especially now that some of the sound stages, you can
Mhm.
see them up now. They've got two of the buildings up now. It really is coming a long way. But in the end, this is a gigantic investment into Monmouth County, 1 billion, 1.2 billion, something like that, 300 acres or thereabouts, repurposing of Fort Monmouth. You're going to have some interim construction jobs, 2,500, 5,000, something like that, but you're going to have permanent jobs there too. That could be 2,500, 3,000. And then with that comes all the ancillary stuff that is in and around the fort. That's,
Right.
your dry cleaner, your pizza place. All those places are going to be positively impacted. And of course, the million-dollar question is, what happens to the housing market as these people pull in? It's already a tighter market. So what does that
Mhm.
mean? Does it get tighter? And of course, with more people moving in, it does. So I think people are excited about it. It's coming faster than I think people are realizing, and a lot of people are saying it's great. Let's take a wait and see how it all pans out in the end.
Okay, Joe, I mentioned Netflix, but as George alluded to, there's a lot more going on there. But it was in Fort Monmouth. I mean, generally speaking, military installations are economic drivers for their regions. How is that going to change from what Fort Monmouth was to what it's going to become, and what kind of things are some of the other kind of things that are going on there? Because
Well,
it's much more than a military installation now. I mean, there's all sorts of things going on. So tell me a little bit about the change.
well, I think you hit it right on the head, and I think George touched on it as well. Netflix is probably at least for now, the tip of the tongue for everybody because it's got a lot of notoriety and it should. But the redevelopment of Fort Monmouth started, several years ago. There's
Right.
been a ton of housing, retail development, industrial development. You talk about a lot of the design work that's been done to redevelop parts of the fort that were, at the end of their economic life. So we see it every day because we're in the market. You see it in the traffic congestion, which, believe it or not, is a good thing. It gets back to George's comment about the retailers benefiting by that and everybody else. So we're we're more than cautiously optimistic. I think the housing shortage aside, I think everything else in the redevelopment's been good for Monmouth County.
Okay, and we are going to talk about housing a little bit later, but I just wanted to sort of get a sense for your feeling about some of these projects going on. So, what should again, what we're trying to do is sort of give folks who may be thinking about starting a business, moving a business to Monmouth County or expanding there, what should they know about Fort Monmouth and that area? I mean, Joe, you talked about sort of dry cleaners. I mean, George talked about dry cleaners and some other kinds of things coming in there. What is the opportunity going to be like? Can you have any sense of? Can you quantify it in some way about what sort of economic impact it's going to have?
So Fort Monmouth at one point had roughly 5,000 people on that base. So, and then they estimate anywhere between 2,500 and 5,000 people surrounding the base that were directly relying on it. When that base closed, it was a big impact for Monmouth
Right,
County, although the county has recovered pretty well since then. That's going back a bunch of years to the BRAC closures, right?
right,
So a lot of that stuff has been backfilled. You've seen other projects in the area where you've seen employment bases draw back. If you look at the Bellworks property in Homedale, that's been a big employer that helped backfill some of that space. And there's other projects like that. So I think that the reinvestment in Fort Monmouth, as you said, we're talking about Netflix, but if you drive around to three host towns, Oceanport, Eatontown, Tinton Falls, you're seeing other economic development too. Big retail parcels, some entertainment spaces come online. There's a couple of different breweries on the property.
mhm,
So all those things will be good uh, ancillary projects other than just the Netflix.
right.
So I expect that there will be more than that. There's a housing component there too, retail component, and that'll continue, and that'll continue to be a boon for that area economically. So there'll be always opportunities that come out of that.
All right. And Joe, what if this redevelopment had never happened? What would the area be like? I mean, I know it's sort of a little bit of a counterfactual, but what were the plans before all of this? Yeah, as George mentioned, when the it must have been come as a blow when the base was closed. What was the feeling then, and how has it changed over the years?
Well, look, I think whenever you have a level of density, you had that density. New Jersey's known for its density, the number of people in the state in terms of residency. But whenever you have something as voluminous as the fort, and then you have the closure, what you need is what you saw in Monmouth County. You saw everybody rallied together to say, what do we need to do and what can we get, whether it need from the federal authorities that at that point supervised the fort or um, local municipalities banding together to say, what do we need to do and how can we approve the varying uses in a expeditious fashion to not lose the economic impact of the foreclosure. And weirdly, looking back on it now, I think it would have been disastrous if we didn't move as quick as we
Okay.
did.
Mhm.
So we got to give credit to all the folks in local governments that did band together to put together an auspicious plan, and the state as well. I mean, the state did its part. So I think everybody deserves credit.
Okay, well, and that does speak again, I think, to the business climate in the region that as you just described, a lot of stakeholders came together to make this happen. Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Now, George, you mentioned Bellworks. I think in Homedale, that's something that we've covered. NJBIZ readers will know it very well. How important is? I mean, the inspired by Somerset Development calls it a metroburb. What sort of effect has that had on the region? Because that predates Fort Monmouth and the redevelopment there. It's been there for a while. It's very recognizable. People who watch the name of the show is escaping me now.
Succession.
So, that's right.
Okay. Yeah.
And it's become a sort of a television icon. But how important is it economically to the region?
Well, listen, it was certainly important for the revitalization of that property. I mean, the property 400 acres. I think it's like 2 million square footage, 2 million square feet of total space, like a
Right.
million six leasable. So you talk about filling those buildings there. That's brought more employment to the area, right? I think that's been a big boon. It's been a great
Mhm.
success. Ralph and his team over there have really done a nice job pulling that together. So when you go there now, it's like a city within a city, right? You have the housing units on the outside that they did a great job on. So it really made that area look very nice and brought some more people to town. And then it brought a bunch of employers to town, right? So that brings more people to our area, and each one of those folks that come, are contributors to our local economy. So I think that was a great project, great example of how to repurpose things that may not have been readily apparent what you do with it, and then you come out and you have this great kind of uh, pillar of a building that sits right there in Homedale.
Okay. And Joe, I mean that concept of having all of these kinds of things in one place and really making it a destination. How does that play in the again? Is it viewed that way in Monmouth County in the region as a place to go, as a not just a place to work, but as a place to live and a place to go to shows and do all sorts of things.
Yeah, I guess you probably consider it a little bit of a precursor to the what everybody refers to today as the work, live, play,
Right.
because the live is sort of around the periphery
Mhm.
of Bellworks, but the live, play, or work play aspect of it, absolutely, as George mentioned. What I loved about the project was that the history of the building was preserved a bit,
Right.
and that what you have is still a variety of tech companies as well as others, non-tech,
Right.
in the building, right? Building was the original Bell Labs, right? So you think about that dynamic, and you have a lot of tech companies that are there. But the common area space, which is substantial, probably 500,000 feet, is utilized for a variety of not only fairs, arts, programs, uh, for the county and for the local Homedale market that does drive activity to the property unrelated to those that are working there or living around the periphery.
Okay. Now, what then are some of the other sort of economic lodestars in the county? I'm thinking other cities like Long Branch, Asbury Park, Red Bank, maybe Monmouth University. Where are some of the other centers of economic activity, George, that folks should know about?
Well, certainly there's quite a few. Certainly today, if you look at the Monmouth Mall, right? The
Hmm.
Monmouth Mall is another big project that's being renovated right in Eatontown,
Right.
coincidentally.
Hmm.
It's a reportedly a $500 million project, 1,000 luxury apartments being built and then repurposing. I don't know. I think a little bit under a million square feet of retail space.
Right.
Whole Foods going there. When you see things like that, that's a real good indicator for the town and a real good project that's coming back online. But there's others. The Vonage building in Homedale is being repurposed. There's a bunch of activity going on in Asbury Park, reinvestment in some retail projects and some residential projects. So a lot of investment being made there. The Monmouth Park, there's some investment being made there for some residential units, or at least some plans have been submitted there. So I think you see these pockets of reinvestment, but it's spread out throughout the county. There's stuff happening on the western part of the county as well. So you're seeing kind of those developments all over the county, and they're big investments and big dollars of people that are coming in and think that those investments are worth it in the county.
Okay. And Joe, let me get you on that too, because George just mentioned the western part of the county. I think most people think when I think of Monmouth, they think of the beach, they think of the ocean, they think of Asbury Park, Long Branch, and being close to the water. But there's a lot to the county. It's 650,000 people, I think, at last count live there. What else is going on around the county that folks should know about?
Well, look, I think you talk about the shore, even parts of the shore that either were less developed or underdeveloped, or in certain markets where we'd had probably what I'd refer to as underperforming
Hmm.
in prior histories. Those have all been reinvigorated. I mean, obviously, the boardwalk along Long Branch is pretty well known and how that's gone. Asbury, we're seeing now significantly more expensive housing units being developed.
Oh,
Um, and of course, the beachfronts. But you go a little bit further north into the Highlands and Keensburg and other areas that are all now um, getting their fair share, justifiably so, of attention and development as well. So I think you're going to just see a broadening of what's been successful in other towns along the whole coastline for Monmouth.
Okay. All right. We should talk about housing because we did mention that. I can remember talking to folks in Monmouth County during and immediately after the pandemic when there was sort of a rush from people from urban areas to buy houses in particularly Monmouth County because it's close to the beach and there was space there. It's a nice place to be. You mentioned the all this development is bringing in new folks, people who do want to start a business there or expand there. They're going to have to find places for people to live. What is and affordability is obviously a main topic of conversation. It was a part of the gubernatorial campaign we just went through. There's a lot of concern about affordability. What does the residential housing situation look like now, George? Are prices still going up, or is it still possible to buy a house somewhere in Monmouth County?
It's getting trickier, Jeff. I'll tell
Okay.
you that much. We continue to see the median home price click up a little bit. So depending on who you ask or which stat you look at, if you look at the Fed stats or you look at some of the more commercial stats, average house price in Monmouth County is a shade under 800,000, $790,000, something like that. That's a hefty price tag. You've seen those. That's clicked up a bit year over year. And days on market have also clicked up a little bit year over year too. So you're seeing maybe getting a little bit closer to a balance, but you're not there yet. You're still seeing a lot of velocity around deals. You're still seeing a lot of cash deals and things, right? And that still means that there's a lot of people chasing less and less inventory. So, it continues to be an inventory story. Jeff, I think we talked about that last time you and I got together. It's inventory is a challenge, and that's going to continue to make affordability a challenge. I'll just add another point.
Sure.
We talk about a lot of these multifamily, these apartments coming online that do include components that are designed to help affordability out a little bit. The single family housing market is a little bit different. That market continues to be very tight.
Okay. Yeah, and Joe, I mean, we've been talking. We've mentioned Asbury Park a couple times, and it sounds like there's a lot of luxury development going on there, and even in Long Branch too. Is that a problem? Is being close to the water is great, and people love it, and they love to look at the ocean, but it's expensive. And are there affordable places for folks to live in Monmouth County if they want to work there?
Yeah, I think George hit on the head. I think they're harder and harder to find. And what you're going to see is what you see in other markets where people need to commute into work.
Mhm.
So they can't afford to live as close as they'd like to live until a date in the future or a certain point of income that is reached. And look, Monmouth is a desirable place to live. So we talked about the access to all logistical things that you need, whether it's rail or water or transportation over the roads.
Right.
That's a benefit as well. Taking the ferry to Manhattan is a benefit, but it's a trade, right? You're going to pay more for your house. You're still probably paying less than you're paying in New York City. So if you're a New York resident that wants to move to New Jersey, that's a benefit to come here
Sure.
versus there. But I think it is hard for a single homeowner or a single wage earner or a young couple that are trying to find their way into certain markets. But that is a New Jersey dynamic. It's not limited just to Monmouth, but it's
No,
evident in
that's true.
Monmouth. Yeah.
Yes, yeah, absolutely, and I didn't mean to sort of make that's going on everywhere, and that's why I did mention the fact that affordability is a certain question, and Monmouth not immune to that, but it's certainly not unique in that way either. So, point well taken. Okay, how about the quality of the workforce? Again, I talking to folks, particularly in the hospitality industry, right after the pandemic, very hard for them to find folks to come back to work. Is that still an issue? And B, how about some of the other kinds of employers? Are folks able to do the hiring that they need? Are they finding the skills that they need, the education levels from the workforce in Monmouth County?
Well, I will tell you, I can speak for us. We've not had that. We haven't had issues hiring people. There's talent available.
Okay.
There are people I think that are out there looking for the right opportunities. I'm also not hearing that at the other end from the folks that we bank in hospitality. We're not seeing those troubles that we did a couple years ago, and we're heading toward the summer season. So when you head toward the summer season, you're going to get some more of that feedback because people are looking to hire seasonal workers. I'm not hearing that there's any adverse issues yet relative to seasonal work either, which is all of which is a positive. And I do think it gets back to the comment about people want to work in an environment where it's conducive to their success. And Monmouth County in particular has proven that there's a wealth of opportunities, whether it's retail or wholesale or industry or any other area. If I had to guess, just from the folks that we've talked to, the construction trades still struggle a bit.
Okay.
Um, that's a skill set in a workforce that's in many areas aging a bit and not getting as many new folks in as they would like. So if
Hmm.
there's any area that we're hearing some of that feedback, that would be one.
Okay. And George, I mean, we mentioned the fact that it's an attractive place to live. That's got to help bring the kinds of skilled workers, educated workers in from elsewhere. Yes.
It does for sure.
Okay.
Our building here that we're sitting in today is in Red Bank, right? So
Mhm.
we've been able to uh, attract people that had been going into the city that says, "Hey, this is a great place. I live here. Is there a good opportunity to work there?" Well, and others, I'm sure, have done the same.
Mhm.
You see every major financial house has a presence here in Monmouth County, Red Bank, Freehold. Everyone's fairly well represented. So you're seeing a lot of that. You're seeing a lot of that employment right here in the market. And plus, it's a good market for the employment base, right? The employment base, if you look at something like 50% of the market here in Monmouth County has a bachelor's degree or higher. So folks that are looking for that level of work, it's a good pull for it. And it's interesting. I was talking to one of our shore operators over in Seabright, and I was asking the same question that you just asked. How are we looking for summer help? Or how are we going to be? And he said, well, right now I think I'm okay, but that's all good until 5 days before we open the doors. We'll know 5 days before
Yeah.
we open the doors whether we're good or not. But they were optimistic that the help was there and that they were going to be okay getting restarted for the summer.
Okay. All right. So, where do you think the most interesting opportunities are? Is there a certain region or area, geographical area, or are there certain industries that you think, Joe, might be more fertile for growth or be poised to kind of take off a little bit here?
Look, I think the easy answer is all varying factions of technology, right? I
Okay.
mean, whether any type of information technology or anything related to technology. But to be fair, look, I'm a finance guy. I actually think there's a little bit of resurgence in finance. We had a little bit of the dip the last couple of years. We've been very fortunate, and I think some of our competitors have as well, in that we've been able to hire a cadre of young finance professionals, whether it be former interns that now want to have banking as a career, whether it be our training program, which is a fairly robust program we've offered the last few years. So that gives me a sense of pride, but also some comfort in that the industry is attracting the folks that we need to attract.
Okay. All right. Very good. All right. You've been very generous with your time, both of you. Before I let you go, I'm trying to get a little, excuse me. Oh, I apologize for that. A sense for the outlook, what you're expecting. First of all, short term, what does the summer season look like coming up, and then more long term, what does it look like down the road? Is it this? Are you expecting the economy to continue to grow? What's you're expecting, George? I'll start with you. First, tell me a little bit about what you expect for the summer, and then going forward.
Yeah, talking to some of our seasonal operators, they seem very positive. From the restaurant folks to the beach folks, they seem very positive that they think it's going to be a heavy shore travel season.
Okay.
Fuel prices always weigh into that, Jeff, where people are going to say, "Hey, I'm not going to travel. I'm not going
Right.
to fly. It's too expensive. It's too inconvenient. I've got a great option that's 60 miles from my house, so we'll go there." People are always cautious, right? But we're seeing the summer rental numbers look good, meaning that the units that are rented, especially the units that that maybe the larger single family homes with a lot of bedrooms and things that people can and amenities, pools and things like that. That seems to be a very attractive end of the market.
Okay.
But in the end, the summer rental rates are up. Our operators are optimistic. The restaurant tours are optimistic. So for today, the immediate summer season, I think everyone's looking very positively.
Okay. And longer term?
Longer term, listen, if you're just looking at the regional stats, they all look good, right? If you're looking at the unemployment numbers, particularly if
Right.
you're looking at the unemployment numbers in Monmouth County, they bode very well. They're positive compared to the state. So I think if you look at all the kind of consumer spending, all the different things that you would look at for larger national trends, I think they're all looking okay. Now,
Okay.
listen, I'm gonna hedge it like my typical banker answer is that
Right.
it depends. You
Okay.
never know. There's some geopolitical instability. You never know with energy prices and things. But for now, all the signs today that I see are pointing in the right direction.
Okay. And Joe, similarly, again, for the shorter term over the summer and then longer term, is there cause for optimism in your view?
Yeah, look, I think that there's a little bit, as you would expect, it does happen. We have economic cyclicalities.
Mm.
So I do think there's a little bit of a tale of two sides of the coin. You're going to get some of the folks, as George mentioned, that are going to get in their car, they're going to do the day trip or the weekend trip down to the shore because that's the best way to get the most out of their dollars.
Mm.
And there are other folks that have a little bit more in terms of resources that are going to give them the opportunity to rent a larger house or bring the whole family group down for a week or two. But that's still all positive. We're not hearing any negatives. And
Okay.
the other great thing about being and doing what we do for a living is you understand by you see the metrics. George talked about consumer spend.
Mhm.
Consumer spend is up in the region, which is good. And we also look at credit metrics. So uh, when people are confident and comfortable, they pay on time and they take out new loans to do a variety of things, whether it be home refinance or improvement or a new vehicle or any of those kinds of things. So those are all positives. Delinquencies are very low. So we're very optimistic in the overall.
Very good. Okay. Well, that's a good place to leave it. George Destafney and Joe Lebel of OceanFirst Bank, thank you very much for joining me. Appreciate you taking the time.
Thanks,
Thanks so
Jeff.
much.
And thank you for watching. Until next time, stay safe, everyone.